Hi everybody, I'm Gio, and welcome back to Chapter 27 for From a Stranger. We're almost done with the novel. Tuesday, July 1st, Danny. The cardiac unit had its own waiting room. No phones allowed. Once every hour, they allowed us to see Dad for 10 minutes. Dad had turned gray. An oxygen tube went into a nostril. An IV poked into his right arm, and he had sensors. Oh my God, he had sensors all over his body. Heart ones and a blood pressure one on his fingers and others. I didn't know what they were. He was my dad. Just lying there, dying. I tried calling Elio, but I didn't get an answer. I tried Xander, but no answer there either. I left a message on David's phone and another on Derek's. Nobody answered. Except for me. Dad was alone. Who else could I call? I needed to hear Elio's voice. I wanted him to tell me that it would be all right. Dad lay unconscious in a huge room, sectioned off by curtains. In each section was a different person as bad as my dad. Each cubicle had its own private nurse, and every hour the doctor on call would check each person. They only let me and Tiffany visit Dad for 10 minutes every hour. I would take one hand, Tiffany the other, and we would sit. I would tell him about Hawaii, and she told him about her catering. We kept talking, even though he never woke up. Dad never woke up. Sometime after the 4th or 5th hour, Tiffany and I started talking to each other. She had lost her husband to cancer. Tiffany's husband had been a slow, lingering type. Mom's had been one of those fast ones. She had been fine 1 month. 6 months later, she had died. Dad had been Tiffany's first-time exploration since her funeral. I guess they latched onto each other like Elio and I had. Sometime after 11 at night, we fell asleep in the waiting room. About 6 in the morning, I tried Elio again. I tried Derek and David. Where was everybody? I can't do this. Tiffany still slept, and I didn't want to wake her. My inner time clock didn't know what time to sleep or wake or eat. Somewhere, I found a bathroom and cleaned up a bit and changed to clean clothes. I still had my duffel. No one stopped me, so I went in and sat by Dad. His skin seemed grayer. I angled the curtain a little to hide me. I took Dad's hand. Oh my God, it was so cold. And I pretended. We spoke some evening while we binge-watched Netflix. My dad. The nurses never noticed me. Or if they did, they didn't care. I stayed with my dad far longer than 10 minutes. Why wouldn't he wake up? I imagined what life would be like without him. I didn't want my mind to think about that, but my mind did anyway. Dad had been the only person I trusted for years, the only person I could talk to about what was going on inside me. He didn't move. We could joke about me being gay, and with him I could be myself. Dad had been my lifeline. He's what held me together all these years. Oh my God, life without Dad would be a nightmare, and I couldn't face that. The void I had felt when Ashley and Xander had betrayed me would be nothing compared with the hall waiting to engulf me. I needed Elio. I closed my eyes and pictured Elio as I had first seen him, sitting at the bar with Timmy's ashes at his side. I'd only known him a week. God, I needed him now. Touching the ring around my neck, I remembered Saturday night when he had given it to me. I traced the edge with my finger and imagined Elio sitting next to me, saying, "Dad will be all right." He wasn't. Oh my God, he wasn't. His hand was so cold. The steady beep of the heart machine made me realize how lonely I was. Elio wasn't here. It was just me. I used the end of my tie-dye shirt and wiped my eyes. Anything will make me cry. He really doesn't hide any longer. I couldn't sleep. I laid my head on Dad's hand. It still didn't move. And I didn't move until the doctor came. Oh my God. "I want you to go get some coffee and some food," the doctor said gently. "When you come back, your father will be in a different room." I glanced at Dad's gray skin, at the uneven blips on the heart monitor, at the too high numbers of his blood pressure. Was Dad slipping away? Elio. I didn't have any choice about seats. Middle seat in the middle section, sandwiched between a man who smelled of peppermint on one side and a teenage boy who watched Pirates of the Caribbean, both 1 and 2, all the way to Vegas. I had never been on a plane before. It jostled as it took off. It made me look around to make sure we hadn't crashed, and it bumped when we landed. I was so sure something had shaken loose. I'm not ashamed to admit it, but I wanted Danny to tell me this was normal and hold my hand. Flying makes me nervous. I waited at the desk beside one of the luggage merry-go-rounds for my special package. It had cost extra because it wasn't regulation size. No, I suppose a box big enough to transport a skimboard wouldn't be. I didn't realize how cool they kept the airport until I stepped outside to pick up my rental. I stopped like I had walked into a wall. Mid-morning and the heat slapped me in the face. No humidity, just intense heat. They never mentioned that in all the Vegas ads. But the clear sky extended as far as I could see. I needed my phone to navigate out of the city. Honolulu is big, but Vegas is much, much bigger. The roads, the signs, all the people. How did Danny do this? The directions on my phone led me out of the city and up to the north. I had never heard of Dead Man's Butte before I met Danny, and I had no idea what to expect. The desert stretched to the horizon in waves of gold or brown or some beige color, and there it met the sky, interrupted by odd hills and odder plants. The sky stretched forever. About halfway to the butte, as Danny called it, I pulled over, got out, and stared. My ears rang a little because of the quiet. Somewhere, the wind blew through dried grasses. So strange, so different from Hawaii, from what I knew. So quiet, so beautiful. I climbed back in the air conditioning, and the further I drove, the more I couldn't believe the size of the desert, or how barren, or how lucky Danny was to live in such a beautiful place. Danny had said the same things about Hawaii. I drove and drove and drove. Wow. More than an hour after Vegas, I found the butte. Much smaller than Honolulu. A lot smaller than Honolulu. And definitely a lot smaller than Vegas. A sign said, "Welcome to Dead Man's Butte. Population 50,000. On the far side of the town was the butte some old miner named the town after. If you looked at it just right, it kind of resembled somebody lying down. I pulled into the town, letting my phone guide me. I drove past old buildings and new buildings and strange curvy streets, a maze of odd streets and old-fashioned buildings. No building stood over 3 stories, with most a single floor. Eventually, the phone led me to the Long Ridge Memorial Hospital. I had new experiences every second. No wonder Danny had such a hard time a week ago. I needed Danny to help me deal with all of this. Maybe I'd let him drive me around for a while. It wouldn't be long, and I could see him. I missed him. An older building. The hospital was a 2-story red brick building with perfect lawns and spotless windows and the constant buzz of people going in and out. As I walked in, I checked myself in one of the windows to make sure I looked all right. Trust me to be the only person in board shorts. Elio, you're not in Hawaii anymore. You're in Nevada. And Danny is close. He's somewhere in this building. I couldn't fight the smile. I'm here, Danny. I'll find you. Their air conditioning chilled the air so much I actually shivered. Walking in, I entered the main waiting room. Full. It also had an enormous freestanding aquarium that easily could have been 500 gallons. That must have been what Danny was standing in front of when he called me the other day. I walked over to reception and spoke to the receptionist. I'm here to see Mr. Dallas Roberson. Name, she said. Elio Smith. She looked over the screen, typed a few commands, and moved the mouse around. I'm sorry, Mr. Smith, but your name is not on the family list. I'm Danny Roberson's significant other, I said. Checking the list again, she picked up the phone and made a quick call. I have a guest who is not on the family list. Elio Smith? Yes, that's right. She hung up and typed on the computer. Mr. Smith, you are now on the family list. A member of the family is coming down to meet you. Was it Danny? I hope so. A moment later, a familiar face appeared. Tiffany. She smiled and hugged me. Elio, you're here. Danny's not going to believe this. I don't believe this. She spoke with a southern lilt and grabbed my hand and pulled me down the hall. Did I mention I still carried a huge flat box? 2 wings, dozens of rooms, and we went into a room with 2 beds, 6 chairs, and a couple of flat screens. Some commentator spoke about a baseball game, quietly making background noise. But where was Danny? Tiffany led me to the bed. I recognized the man immediately because we had chatted so much. Dallas. Danny's dad. Blonde, crew cut, streaked with gray, a pale blue hospital gown, and skin that barely had any color in it. He didn't look anything like Danny. Tiffany hugged me again and said, Danny talks about you all the time. I hugged her back, then set the box down on a chair. It's a pleasure, but where is Danny? The nurses found him asleep next to Dallas this morning. When he snuck into the cardiac unit is anybody's guess. The doctor sent him down to get some coffee and get something to eat. Poor guy. He hasn't been home since he got off the plane, Tiffany said. I miss Danny more. It was almost a physical pain, and I took a deep breath. Do you mind if I wait here for him? Not at all, she said, and leaned close to Dallas, taking his hand. Dallas, son, guess who's here? You don't need to disturb him, I said. It's okay. He finally woke up a few minutes ago. She patted his hand again. Dallas, Elio's here. Dallas's eyes fluttered open and his hand moved a little. I took it. His fingers were ice cold. Hey, I came to check on you and Danny. Trying to smile, Dallas started to cough. Easy now, Tiffany said. She brought up a glass with a straw and let Dallas take a sip. Don't make the doctor mad. Just lay back and take it easy, I said. Let me show you something. Remember Danny's skimboard? I brought it with me. Walking over to the box, I opened it and slid the board out. Wrapped in bubble wrap, it took a moment to free. When done, I brought the board over to Dallas and Tiffany. Well, look at that, Tiffany said. That's too nice to put in the water. And Danny made it? That boy has no end of talent. My cousin Sal owns a surf shop that also makes surfboards. Sal gave Danny the wood, I helped him cut it out, and Danny prepped the board for my friend Billy to finish. Billy did the painting, but Danny did all the rest. I propped the skimboard up, so Dallas could get a better look. Dallas ran a hand over the knot and the edges. "Someday soon, I'll help Danny make his own board." "You know," I said, "I've got some pictures of Danny back in Hawaii. Do you want to see them?" Dallas nodded. Danny. The coffee in the cafeteria tasted watery and thin. It got me through 10 minutes of living, but that's about it. They had painted the cafeteria a cheerful, sunny off-yellow that contrasted with the brown tables and beige chairs. Once again, signs reminded us of sensitive equipment nearby and to use phones only in appropriate waiting rooms. I didn't feel like calling anyone anyway, except Elio. Time conversion. 10 o'clock Vegas time is 7 o'clock Hawaiian time, right? Or is it the other way around? It's too early to call anyway. I needed him to hold me. What if Dad died? I'd be alone here in Nevada. Dad had been like a best friend. What if he died? The ache in my chest kept me from breathing. What if Dad died? I couldn't handle it. Elio was 3,000 miles away. I needed him. I pushed the eggs on my plate around, finally forcing them into the salsa before taking a bite. Lifeless, rubbery eggs swirling in lumpy red sauce. I couldn't eat. After downing the rest of the coffee in one gulp and dutifully tossing the rest of the eggs into the garbage, I refilled my cup with hot water and headed off to the room they had hidden Dad in. At least Dad had improved enough to get a room. I needed to call work, let them know where I was. Every time I tried to call my brothers or Elio, I couldn't get a hold of anyone. I was alone. There was only one bright spot in this tragedy. That made me smile. Nobody else wore board shorts. It was another proof that I've changed. But the chuckle almost turned into a sob. Elio, I need you. Someone had left the door to Dad's room open, and I heard people talking inside. The doctor checking on Dad, no doubt. Dad's heart ejection fraction was low enough to trouble the doctor. That didn't sound good, and I needed to look it up to even understand what it meant. I walked into Dad's room. What's that on the chair? That's my skimboard. Lightly stained wood accented the knot, and the clear coating shined. Alternating blocks of red and green decorated the edge. Elio's favorite color is red. Mine is green. How did it get here? The painting, a red and gold sunset over the ocean, with 2 dolphins jumping out of the water. Not just any dolphins. One large one, one small. The smaller one was above, with a flipper placed over the larger, as if he were protecting him. The larger one had a small design on it, just ahead of the dorsal fin, a stylized wolf tattoo, just like Elio's tattoo. Billy had signed the art with a flourish. He really does do incredible work. I looked about the room. The first thing I saw was the open box it came in. It was a big box. Then I saw Tiffany sitting by the bed, holding Dad's hand. My dad was sitting up in bed. He was awake. Oh my God, he was awake. Dad, are you all right? Elio rose from the chair next to my dad. He wore the ring necklace and a silly grin, and he wiped one eye. "Hi, Danny," he said. Elio was here. My Elio. My eyes immediately teared. Something caught in my throat. Elio, you're here. I took a step towards him, and I ran. Elio, oh my God, I sobbed. I didn't stop to breathe. I don't know how I ended up across the room so fast. But I jumped at Elio, catching him around the neck and pushing us both into the wall. I hung on because I knew this couldn't be real. Elio was here. My love was here. I cried. I missed him. I needed him. Elio, I said, fighting to get that one word out. Elio, I said, hugging him. This couldn't be real. He couldn't be here. I think I missed you more, Elio whispered. But his hug sure felt real enough. How are you even here? I asked, my voice shaking. Don't talk, babe. You feel so nice, he said. I didn't talk, I just held on. My shoulders relaxed. Elio was here. Elio had come to me. We stood that way for a minute, and Elio's face was wet, and so was mine. I wiped his cheek as he set me down. Tiffany dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. You two make me so happy. I don't know what made you help Danny last week, but I think you saved his life. Elio. 5 years ago. I gave up. I couldn't fight the waves anymore. Each time I managed to get us a few feet closer to shore, another wave dragged us back. We were in a riptide, and the current carried us out to sea. If I swam a few feet in either direction, we'd be free. I couldn't see the beach, or the ocean, or only the car and its headlights, and that didn't help. It was too dark. I could let go of Billy, save myself, but then Billy would die. I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't abandon him. We'd die together. Maybe he was already dead. It didn't matter. I'd save his body. I'm sorry, Billy, I said. No, Billy had to be alive. He had to. I screamed again. The wind howled its strength. It blew my voice back at me. Something touched my left leg, and I screamed. It hurt beyond anything I had ever felt before. I screamed again, heaving Billy a little closer to shore. It was only a few feet away, but we couldn't make it. The current pushed us again toward the rocks, and again, I'm sorry, Billy, I screamed. Somehow I would keep trying. If Billy went under, I went under. We broke surface. I sputtered for breath. Something grabbed my collar and pulled. I held on to Billy, trying to help. Something pulled again, dragging us from the current. More arms, more people. They had made a chain, 10 people long, and caught us. Foot by foot they fought the ocean for us, until we were safe on shore. Somebody had already called 911, and an ambulance arrived a minute later. I crawled to Billy. His skin was like ice. Some guy felt his neck. The same guy that had pulled me and Billy from the water. I think there's a heartbeat. He's alive, he said. Elio. Now, that's why I did it, I said. Danny rested his head on my shoulder, his arms draped around me. I'm still repaying all the strangers who pulled me and Billy from the water. They didn't have to, but they did it for a stranger who desperately needed help. For me, and for Billy. When I realized Danny needed help, I had to do something. And somewhere last week, we fell in love. Danny rubbed my hand and whispered, I'm glad you did. I don't know who most of those people were, and I don't know if they ever found out what happened to me and Billy later. One stayed in touch. You met him. He runs a sand crab, I said, and kissed. My love. Barney? He and his wife pulled us from the surf and gave us a second chance at life. I have to give him a hug for that, Danny whispered. He's been like an uncle. It took a lot of work to walk again, and then to learn to surf again, and then to dance, but he and his wife made it possible. I like to think that maybe some of those people had come to the luau's and recognized me and learned what they had given me, or seen some of Billy's work and known that they had saved his life, I said. Danny's finger traced the scars on my leg, and I let him this time. Even after 5 years, the tissue was still sensitive, but he kept his touch feather-light, almost a tickle. It did tickle. I moved my leg away and grabbed his hand. Stop that. I wasn't doing anything, he said. Yet. Danny, Tiffany said, shaking her head. "You are the biggest tease." "That's what I love about him," I said. Dallas tried to sit up, and Tiffany propped the pillows a little. Time for a change of subject. "Danny, has your dad seen what you can do?" "What do you mean?" Danny asked. "That routine or workout or whatever you did for Shani and the twins last week, has your dad ever seen it?" I asked. I'm glad Lynette gave me the week to be with Danny. Last week was not enough, and I doubt this week will be either. I usually practice by myself. Some of my neighbors did, Danny said. "It's time you showed your dad, babe," I said. Danny smiled and leaned in for a kiss. "Anytime, babe." "We'd love to see it," Tiffany said, and helped Dallas sit a little taller. Danny moved the chairs out of the way and pushed the curtain back as far as it could go. Then he moved the other bed. It was a good thing Dallas didn't have a roommate. Once again, Danny proved that Ashley was an idiot. He sat on the floor, then lifted himself by his hands only, tucked and rolled, and the magic happened. Once again, his legs and feet never touched the floor. Part gymnastics, part yoga, part sheer impossibility. He went into some type of handstand on his elbows, arching his back into a crescent. His shirt slipped, revealing ribs and abs and the interplay of the muscles with each motion. Okay. I couldn't hide my excitement. I smiled. I loved this man. Danny did all the moves he did before, but added a few new ones. He added a new pose, freestanding shoulder presses. At the end, he held himself still and steady and raised his left hand until he only stood on his right hand. Balancing, legs in the air, spread eagle. He did it as if it were easy. I didn't know he could do that. And neither did his audience at the door. 5 people stood there. 2 looked just like Dallas. Well, bigger versions of Dallas. The shorter of the 2 must be David, about the same height as me, 6 feet. He was the same size as Al. David had close-cropped blonde hair and muscles everywhere. The taller behemoth must be Derek, easily 6'6". Danny was 5'4". Derek had to have been slouching in the picture Danny had showed me, because the man looked monstrous. The man had muscles on top of his muscles, and his neck was as big around as my thigh. David wore a white golf shirt that bulged everywhere as the fabric strained against his muscles. I doubt a shirt from any store would fit Derek's arms. He wore an old t-shirt with the arms and sides ripped out. "You got some explaining to do, baby bro," David said. To his credit, Danny didn't flinch. He let himself touch the ground at the same rate of speed as he started, and then adjusted his shirt. "Yes, I do," Danny said. I don't think anybody else saw the slight shake in Danny's hands. Facing his brothers terrified him. Thank you for joining me for this chapter. Our next session will be the last chapter for this book. I'll see you then. Peace.